All right, seventh grade, as we are getting now into chapter 12, we are going to today start talking about square roots. Square roots almost looks like a long division sign, but it essentially is that. And on your calculator, it'll be this button right there. You see the X with the little square root sign. Essentially, what square root means is that if you take a number, and I'm going to do a very easy one, we're going to take the number 64. Okay? 64 is what we call a perfect square because you can take an exact number, multiply it by itself, and get 64. Okay? So you should know, without too much difficulty, that 8 times 8 equals 64. So the square root of 64 is 8. So when I go into my calculator and I plug in 64, and then I press my square root button, it tells me that it equals 8. If your calculator tells you that there's something different than 8 as the square root of 64, it's time to get a new calculator. Check the battery, do something, make sure you're checking the right button, because I can assure you that the square root of 64 is indeed 8. We'll come back to our calculator here in just a second, but we want to talk about the directions that you're going to take. So the first set of directions that you're going to be working with tell you to find the two square roots of the number. Now, if you really think about it, all numbers really have two square roots, okay? For example, 16. Well, if you were to go plug in into your calculator, okay, and I'm not going to use the calculator for everyone, but I'm going to show you the number 16. So I'm going to punch in 16. I'm going to press my square root button, and it's going to tell me that the square root of 16, okay, is 4. But if I really stop and think about it, another square root for 16 would actually be negative 4, because we know that a negative times a negative equals a positive. So negative 4 times negative 4 would equal 16. Now, let's say I was looking at the number 100. If you go and plug 100 into your calculator, press the square root button, it's going to tell you that the square root is 10. But then common logic, because we know that negative 10 times negative 10 also equals 100, negative 10 would also be a square root. Okay, the last one that we're going to do in this section is 196. Okay, the square root of 196, if you plug that into your calculator, it's going to tell you that it's 14. Okay, which then means that the other square root for 196 is negative 14, because a negative times a negative equals a positive. That's the first section. The next part tells you to find the square root, and then it also gives you an S there in parentheses. I mean, it could also be roots. All right, for example, it might ask you for the square root of 169. So you're just going to go to your calculator. I'm going to turn it on. You're going to plug in 169. You're going to press the square root button, and it's going to tell you that it equals 13. Now, what does this mean when it talks about the root or roots? What does it mean it wants more? If there's no symbol there, if there's nothing in front of the number, you have heard me tell you before, it implies that it's positive. There's no negative sign here. It just wants the square root of 169. There's no positive or negative sign here, which means we're just dealing with positive, which means it just wants 13. Now, sometimes it might give you something that looks like this. It might say it wants the negative square root of 4 over 225. Now, some formulas might, some calculators might do different. Let's see what my calculator does. Because I'm going to be honest, I'm not 100% sure. So we're going to go on an adventure together. Let's type in 4, press my fraction button. You should be familiar with that. Over 225. I'm going to press square root, see what it gives me. Oh boy. Yeah, see, this is, as you know with Mr. Swack, this is not a good situation. These repeating decimals. So, well, what in the world then are we supposed to do? So I had a funny feeling it was going to do this, which is why I kind of did it, because I wanted to show. We do not want answers as repeating decimals. I do not want you to put an answer like this. So, well, what do? Well, then we have to just look at the numbers. Let's turn the calculator off here. Now we just have to look at the numbers that we have. So we're going to go with 4. Well, if you figure out what the square root of 4 is, the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, so I'm just going to find the square root of these individually. If you plug in 225 and the square root, you're going to find that that's 15. So you just end up with 2 over 15. But there's a negative sign in front of this square root, which means it wants the negative square root of 4 over 225. So you better put the negative sign for your answer. Now, the last one it's going to give you, let's see here. What's that number? All right. We're going to say plus and minus square root 12 and 25/100ths. Okay? So we're just going to come over here. We're going to plug into the calculator 12.25. We're going to press square root. It's going to tell us that it's 3.5, which means the square root is 3.5, but it wants both the positive and the negative square root. That's why we get a plural up here sometimes. If you see both signs in front of it, it wants both. It wants positive 3.5. It wants negative 3.5 as your answer. So make sure you put both of them. All right? Very good. Now, the last part that you're going to be doing on your assignment today tells you to evaluate the expression, which means it's going to basically give you a math problem, and it's going to be your job to figure it out. So let's look at 2 and the square root of 36 plus 9. Well, this isn't very hard. All a number right next to a square root means is multiplying, just like a number right next to a variable means multiplying. So the first thing you're going to want to do in this situation is figure out what the square root of 36 is. If you punch in 36 square root into your calculator, you're going to find that the square root is 6, because 6 times 6 is 36. So this is 6. So what this is 2 times 6. Okay? Since this is 6, it becomes 2 times 6. Well, 2 times 6 is 12. Then I do 12 plus 9. It equals 21. All right? So let's say, all right, I'm going to do 8 minus 11 and the square root of 25 over 121. Now, we want to remember what happened last time when we had a fraction and a square root. So, once again, we want to see what exactly is going to happen here. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in 25 over 121 and the square root, and there we go, with a bunch of repeating decimal, 0.454545. I don't want that. So I need to look at 25 and 121 individually. I know that the square, if I plug into my calculator the square root of 25, I'm going to get 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. If I plug into my calculator the square root of 121, I'm going to get 11, because 11 times 11 is 121. So this is going to be 5 over 11. Okay? So now I have to do 11 times 5 over 11. Now, that's not hard to do with the calculator. Watch this. It should equal 5 if I know how to plug this into my calculator. 11 times 5 over 11 will equal 5. So this whole thing is equal to 5. So now it's just 8 minus this whole part right here is equal to 5. So now it's just 8 minus 5. Well, 8 minus 5 is 3. Let's look at one more. All right, we're going to go 3. All right, and we're going to have a big parentheses, and we're going to have the square root of 125 over 5 minus 8 in parentheses. So, order of operations tells us we always do what's in parentheses first. So I want to deal first with this square root. 125 over 5. Now, there's a couple different ways I can do this. I could think, well, I know that a fraction is a division problem, and I could go and do 125 divided by 5. Well, 125 divided by 5 is 25. So I know that this is really the square root of 25, because that's what that is. The square root of 25 is 5. So this would actually become 5 minus 8. Now, I'm going to show you a little trick here, because this one should work a little bit differently. I should be able to go 125 over 5. The calculator should recognize automatically that that equals 25. And I am going to be shocked if this gives me a different answer than 5 when I press the square root button. You can see I don't do square roots on this calculator very often, but it should just give me 5, as it did. Okay? I didn't think it would give me some 5.0000 whatever. Okay? So it should just say 5. So it's 5 minus 8. Now 5 minus 8 is negative 3. Okay? So I know that a number right next to parentheses means multiplication. So once I've figured out what's in parentheses, which is negative 3, all I do is multiply that by the 3 that's there. And I find that the whole thing, 3 times negative 3, equals negative 9. That's what we're doing. I will be available to help you with this assignment on Monday, April 20. All right, talk to you later, 7th graders. Goodbye.